Welcome. This is Joe McCall. You are at the Real Estate Investing Mastery podcast. Welcome. Glad you're here. Got some cool things to talk about today. This is going to be a podcast about creative deals. We've talked about it a lot on the show. I love creative real estate because if you're just a one-trick pony and you're just offering cash offers to everybody, you're going to really struggle in this business. And there's a lot of sellers that want to sell that can't. There's a lot of buyers that want to buy right now but can't. While the whole competitive real estate investing world is going after either the deeply discounted properties or the buyers that have perfect A+ credit, everyone's going after them. What about the rest of the majority of people out there looking to buy or sell their home? We're going to talk about ways that you can help sellers and buyers and win yourself on creative financing deals on this podcast. Cool. So we got a special guest. I'm going to bring him on in just a second. First, I want to talk about, yes, can't talk about it enough, my new book, REI Secrets. You can get it free. Just pay shipping and handling at reisecrets.com. And this is a book. It's thick. I can't believe it. Daily nuggets of real estate investing wisdom that are going to help you get more leads and close more deals. Those of you who have been listening to my show for a while, I do these REI in your car podcasts where I'm driving in my car and I just record things from deals that we're working on or coaching calls that we have or whatever, just thoughts about real estate investing, about the business of getting more deals, about marketing, automation, and delegation, which is kind of like the main three themes of anything that I publish and produce. And I've condensed them all into about 100 little 2 to 3 page chapters in here that you can read, like just read one chapter a day. This chapter is called, Are You Committed to Making This Work? I talk about, are you actually taking it seriously? How about this one? Oh, it's my favorite chapter. It's called I Love Marketing. Yeah, I talk about why marketing is so important. Make 10 offers a day on the MLS. What? Yep. You can do that. It's not that hard. Is this 4-letter word stopping you? So just, there's no rhyme or reason to the collection or the order of the chapters. They're just intended to be something you can stop and read in a one day and gets a little bit of motivation and wisdom to excel and succeed in your real estate investing business. I'm excited about it. And you can get the book for free at reisecrets.com. Come on. reisecrets.com. Just pay a little bit of shipping and handling and you can get it for free. Cool. So on today's show, I'm excited. I got a guy on here who's from Texas, who's actually from the beautiful city of St. Louis, the beautiful city where the Cardinals are in first place in the division right now. And the St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup last year. His name is, I'm going to get his name wrong, and I'm sorry, but it's Nick Legarmo. Well, let me just bring him on and see how I did. Nick, are you there?
I'm here, Joe. Thanks for having me. And by the way, you probably said it better than I do most of the time. So that's the Italian. That's the Italian.
I love it.
Name,
and you're from an area in St. Louis that is known as the Italian area, the Hill.
I am.
Where some of the best restaurants in St. Louis are from. I'm kind of new to St. Louis. I mean, I've only been here 16 or 18 years, but I moved here when I was in my 30s and late 20s, actually. Is the Hill actually really, is there a large population of Italian families there?
Well, it used to only be Italians, I think. And there's actually, I haven't been there in a couple of years, but obviously as people age on and, kids want to move to the suburbs, the desirability is not quite as probably, it's just not as desirable in areas living in the suburbs and the newer construction house. But, they had an association and in a very active, it's not really a homeowners association, but it's a cool place. If anybody ever gets to St. Louis, there's some of the best bakeries I've ever been to, Italian bakeries, some of the best Italian food and delicatessens and stuff like that. It's and there's just a ton of history on the Hill too. I mean, some great names were from the Hill. Joe Garagiola, Yogi Berra. There's more too. I'm trying to think. Not Joe Torre, but there's one other one. I can't think of who it was, but they're all legends, especially when it comes to St. Louis baseball. Stan Musial used to have a place down not too far from there.
Yeah.
You can't beat the food, and the people are just as nice.
Nice. Well, if you're ever back in St. Louis, you want to go there for dinner or drink, cappuccino. Let's do
There
it.
you go. We'll find something. Get a cannoli, right?
Yes.
Can't go wrong with a cannoli.
I was just in Little Italy a week ago, and in New York City, right in the Manhattan. They have a Little Italy there, and it was the Italian festival or something like that. I don't know if I've ever been in such a small area that had so many people as that evening in New York City. It was insane, and but it was a lot of fun. And I had too many cannolis. I ate too many of them.
Not hard to do. I can tell you that.
Cool. So Nick, thanks for being on the show. I want to talk about creative deal structuring. You've been doing a lot of deals in the Texas area. You're living in Texas now, right? What part
Correct.
of Texas?
I'm in the Dallas area. So, we've been doing business. I've been doing the seller financing, creative deal structuring since probably 10, 11, after the last recession, and it was really the reason how we got into it was just as a preventive mechanism for, from preventing from a downturn in the economy. I didn't want to have, I tried to figure out a way how I could control real estate versus own it, because I didn't want to get left holding the bag. And, as 600 and something transactions later, I think we've done a pretty good job of figuring out what that looks like, and really how to build a very profitable, successful business, and more importantly, be able to provide home ownership to people that have been told they can't, buy. That's really the baseline, or the foundation of everything that we do. So, and it's worked out really well. It truly is a win-win-win all across the board.
So talk about what your business looks like today, and then I want to ask you some questions about how you got into this.
Yeah, so I think what we do is not difficult. It's just complex, and I think the best way to describe it is if you look at what a wholesale deal looks like, or even a fix and flip, from acquisition to disposition. It's very it's fairly definable, right? There's not a whole lot of, you're not dealing with Dodd-Frank or SAFE Act, or CDs, or buyer qualifying, or RMLOs, all that other stuff that goes along with seller financing. There again, it's not that it's difficult, it's just complex, and all those things that usually scare people away are actually benefits, in my opinion, to the seller, because it just adds another layer of not necessarily security, but another layer of evaluation, from a professional standpoint, from an expert that really is underwriting a borrower's file and making sure that they are who they say they are, or going through a third-party servicing company to make sure payments are made, they're posted. We're in Texas, so we deal with a lot of Hispanics and a lot of Spanish-speaking people, just by the nature of who we are. So there's obviously a language barrier there sometimes. So the ability to have somebody that's bilingual in-house on a third-party level from a servicing or RMLO is extremely valuable to what we do.
Cool. So what is it? Can you talk a little bit more about what you do? Like, are you guys?
So what we do is primarily is we buy, we fix, we sell, which is what a lot of people do. But instead of selling it through the retail channel, like to a retail buyer that's looking for a single family house that's going to go through the traditional loan process and through a realtor, we sell or finance it basically, and we create our own buyers list, and as a result of that, we underwrite our own buyers. We become the bank. At the end of the day, we are the bank.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard to do, because you don't have to have a lot of money, because you can still do the deal process the same way all the way through, except when you get ready to sell, instead of selling it to a retail buyer, you're selling it to a person that needs, seller financing. And why this is important is because if you look at where things are going and where we've been, the numbers are dramatic. And I don't mean in a small way, they're dramatic in a large way. The number of entrepreneurs today versus 10 years ago, it's astronomical. people that work for themselves, they're self-employed. They can't run down to Chase or Fargo or B of A or wherever they're going to get a loan from and get qualified. The qualifications are too stringent. In fact, I was just reading a report. The average decline credit score is way over 700 now. So you have to have a credit score
Are you
above
serious?
700. No, I'm dead serious. The minimum is even, the minimum is 620, but there's because there's other factors that go into that loan application. There's besides the credit score, there's your employment. Are you a W-2 employee? Are you self-employed? If you're 1099, really hard to get it right now. You also got things like DTI, which is your debt to income ratio. The banks got their hands slapped pretty darn hard at the end of 2007, 8, 9 timeframe. And when interest rates are historically low as they are, they really want to mitigate their risk. So you see a lot of things that come in on the retail market, and I'm sure a lot of listeners that have done fix and flips have thought they were going to sell it for X and end up getting an appraisal back and it's 10% lower. And it's not necessarily because the house isn't really worth that much. It's just because they're erring on the side of being conservative, because the more money they can get down on the deal and the less they're loaning out relative to that asset, that property, the less exposure that they have. So it goes back to economics 101, and which is supply and demand. And if you look at a neighborhood, for example, Joe, all you see up and down in the neighborhood are real estate or realtor signs, right? They're listed with Keller Williams or Century 21 or whoever it might be. Well, that's a traditional transaction. So there's, a lot of things have to go the right way for that deal to go down in a timely manner, right? The buyer is going to be extremely, if they can qualify through a conventional or FHA or VA loan, they're going to be picky because they have the control. They have access to all that other inventory, and they control the hammer per se, right? They have the ability to go out and find the house that they want, the way they want it, and make the offer that they want. And the seller either takes the deal or they don't take the deal. And it really becomes at that point, what's the motivation level of the seller? And a lot of times in the retail market, we will see sellers that panic. We see sellers that sell for less than what they probably could get because they panic because they have all this capital and cash out, and now it's taking longer to sell. They're not getting traction because there's so much inventory out there for retail buyers to choose from. The opposite holds true on the seller finance model. If you can't provide seller financing, look, it's almost 50-50. I mean, it's almost right now in the next 2 to 3 years, the number of people that need to buy with seller financing versus traditional money or traditional lending is almost 50-50. So, but the market on the retail market is nowhere near 50-50. It's probably 98% retail and 2% seller financing. If it's even that good. So you have a huge imbalance there. So when you can control and be on the side of limited supply with high demand, you can dictate the terms of the deal to your favor. And that's what we've done. Not that we're trying to gouge and not that we're trying to overprice. What it allows us to accomplish getting maximum retail price based on the true value of the property. But more importantly, it allows us to get velocity. It gets velocity. So we get to take the same capital stack and we can turn that capital over and over again much quicker than we could in a retail environment. And that's how we become extremely profitable.
I love that. And I'm writing down some questions I got for you.
Okay.
So your main model now is to go buy properties, you take them down, and then you rehab them. There's some guys out there, Nick, that they just buy crackerjack properties, and maybe that's not the right word, like really crappy, junky properties.
Distressed
right?
Properties.
Yes.
3-sided houses, burnouts, whatever.
Yeah. And don't do anything to them, and then turn around and
Yes.
sell them with owner financing. Do you do that, first of all?
No, I don't. And
Good,
we've done
because
it before.
those are the guys that you see in the local news. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, you got to be careful with that.
Oh,
you got to be really careful. We have done it a very few times. I would say out of 600 plus transactions, maybe a handful. And the only reason why we did it was because the borrower was qualified to do the construction. They had their own construction company. They were roofers or general contractors, painters, whatever it might be, and they had the ability and the infrastructure to do that. They wanted to do the work themselves, and it's a difficult play. It's not where I like to go. Plus, here's the thing with that is that you got to be really careful where you price it. So when I fix a house and I build it to a retail, everything we finish out, I've always built. We want to build a quality product that it's not going to be brand new, but it's going to be extremely safe and livable. And with that, we want it to be affordable, and we don't want somebody to be able to come in and have to sink a lot of cash in after the fact. One of the biggest reasons why this model works, there's several of them, but getting back to the original question, why we don't do it is because we can't get maximum value. Okay. For example, I'm just going to throw out a round number. I just know these numbers. So I just cranked the code out on this. So let's just say that, I'm going to make sure I got the right thing. Let's just say you have a property that's worth $100,000. So you get max value when you can build it out to $100,000. In the seller finance model, in a high growth area where properties that continue to appreciate regularly, you might be able to go 3 to 5% above retail price, because seller financing, there's a little bit more risk. The borrower's not quite as qualified as some other types of borrowers. But you can't, we're not going to sell a $100,000 house for $120,000. That's just ridiculous, especially when our cost basis is 70 or 75% of that, right? So if you look at a cost basis of 75%, okay, which is, I think, very middle of the road for most people. So your cost basis is $75,000. You seller finance it. You get a small down payment. We take no less than 10%. I highly recommend no going any lower than that, but a lot of people take lower. We want to have equity. We want to have the borrower to have an equity position in that property. It's important because you don't want to take these houses back. That's not our business model. Yeah. You want them to succeed. You want them to have a property that they own for a long time, and they have pride in ownership. And if they get into a situation, they can turn around and sell it and at least get out without being upside down, which is what happens in a lot of situations. So going back to my example, $100,000, the P&I, principal and interest on a $100,000 loan at 10% interest. Now, 10% interest, that's awful high. Well, is it really? And here's the reason. Here's the question I asked. Well, first of all, you don't want to pay 10% interest, then go down to Chase or Wells Fargo or Bank of America and go get qualified and get a 4.5% note. No, I'm stopping. You're more than welcome to buy the property that way. So then the next question is, well, is 10% too high? Well, no, it's not, because the government says you can charge up to 6.5% above APR, which is an annual prime offer rate, which is an index like LIBOR or something like that. It adjusts weekly, and you just pull the rate and you set it up, and that's what we do. And it's a little bit, it's probably, I could technically write probably at 10.25 right now. I don't know what the rate is today, but we keep it at 9.9. So the question becomes, well,
which, by the way, that usually that payment at that 10% interest is about what the rent would be anyway.
That's exactly where I was going to. That was the next thing I was going to say. So if you're in the right price band and you're right affordability, because this model doesn't work for $300,000 houses. This model is something you want to keep it below the median home price for in an area. For example, Dallas, our median home price is now over $200,000. The maximal affordable house price that I can probably safely sell to a borrower is probably in the 165 to 175 price point. So I'm below the median, which is where I want to be, and I'm still at affordability, because what's really important is that, and the question is, what's the interest rate on rent? If you're making $1,000 a month rent payment, how much is your interest? Well, you can't calculate it because it doesn't exist. If you got $1 back of that $1,000 a month in some kind of a rebate or something, you can figure out what the interest expense is. It's a lot higher than 10%. Plus, you're not getting the benefit of the tax write-offs. You're not getting the depreciation or the appreciation, I should say, of the house moving forward. So in this example, the P&I is 965. Well, so think about it this way. So the majority of the notes that we've ever written, we did with wrap mortgages, and we had to show with lenders what that was, and we basically collateralized the note, and we pledged the note that we write, because we always have borrowed money, just like you would borrow money for a fix and flip from a hard money lender. or a private lender or wherever it might come from, we borrow, 10 and 2, 12 and 2. But it didn't really matter. And here's the reason why, because we were in a 75 cents cost basis, right? So if I'm borrowing $75,000 on at 12, let's call it 10%, but I'm writing a note at $100,000 at 10%, it's still not even equal because I'm paying interest only on the front side and I'm creating amortized money on the back. So it's not even a fair fight at the end of the day, but I'm only keeping that money in there short term so I can have the ability to build that note up and then sell the note, for a small discount. And the net of that transaction is the profit. It's still a transactional deal, but we realized a long time ago that on the same asset, the same property, we were able to get an extra 10, 15, sometimes 20% more money on the same property because we were able to create the financing and so on. So 960. So let's just say that you were able to use private money. Say you could get private money and somebody was going to give you 20-year money at I don't know, say 7 or 8%. It doesn't really matter the number. I use 10%. The cost basis is 75. So the yield on this model right here is about almost 15% because I'm getting 10% money on $100,000, and I'm only paying 7 or 8% or whatever the number is on 75. So
what would your approximate cash flow be on this?
I didn't figure that out. It's going to be more than rent. Most of the time it's more than rent, which is extremely important. And see, at the end of the day, we're controlling the property, not owning it. And the whole model is how do you be the bank, right? We want to be the bank. Bank of America doesn't own apartment complexes or rental portfolios, not by choice. They might take something back in an REO, but they don't keep that on their books for a very long period of time. So they don't have to because they can lend money out and their cash flow. Joe, do you have a mortgage on your house, or have you ever had a mortgage on your house?
Yeah.
How many times did you in your life or your mortgage? Most people write 30-year mortgages. I don't know how many years you ever had a mortgage. How many times did you ever call the lender? How many times did you call the bank for any reason?
Never.
Can you remember any time?
Well, yeah, back when the market crashed, I was calling my lender to negotiate short sale.
Well, that's a little bit different. Yeah. You ever call them when the roof leaked or the plumbing backed up, or you needed a new dishwasher, or the window breaks, or the door lock doesn't work, or the washer and dryer?
I wish I could.
You wish you could. Well, guess what? I can't tell you how many calls I haven't received because they don't call me. As a bank, the lender, they don't call you.
Right.
But this is obviously an advanced strategy. But what's important to understand, and this is the main point I want to make, and where we've sort of evolved and we expanded our business to, is that we're actively in the buying and the selling of these notes. So we help educate and teach people how to do creative financing, but they can treat it as a transaction more than a long-term cash flow. Because it's really hard to go scratch a check for $100,000 and take it out of your account and get payment of $800 a month. It's a great return and it's $900 a month, but you run out of capital really quick. If a lot of people if they don't even have $100,000, but you still run out of cash regardless of what it is. So we help to create that opportunity, and then we can come in and we can help get maximum value for that note, and they sell the note, and we're a note buyer. And when they follow certain certain checklist of things that need to be done, like using an RMLO, which is a residential mortgage loan originator, what helps do the underwriting and do the qualification to borrow. They're again,
which by the way, which makes you compliant with Dodd-Frank.
Absolutely. Makes you, and see, all this stuff is stuff we don't do anyway. I mean, we don't personally do, all we do is review and approve. We look at the underwriting file, they do the underwriting, then it goes to servicing. Now the borrower, after we sell them, sell the property, write the note, I sell it to you, and now you're making a payment to whoever our servicing company is. You're not making it to our company, you're making the servicing company. The servicing company then takes that payment for a fee, which is rolled into the note most of the time for the borrower. And then from there, let's say it's $1,000 a month payment. And let's say taxes and insurance are another 200 of that 1,000, right? So that's the servicing company will escrow the taxes and insurance, and they'll basically deposit the P&I, the principal and interest, into our account. Just that simple. And in an event of a slow pay, no pay, default status, the servicing company will step in and, help remedy the problem with our guidance and and what we want to do on it. So there again, it's not difficult, it's just complex, but that's what we have stepped in to do to help the people that want to do 5 or 10 of these a year. Because here's the advantage, Joe. This is where I wanted to make this point. Most people that play in the wholesale space or even fix and flip space, throw me out a number. Is it 70 cents on the dollar, 80 cents on the dollar? I know each market's a little different. Some are more aggressive than others, but give me a worst case scenario that you think you'd have to pay to be able to get a deal and be able to fix and flip or
Well, if
whatever.
you're in California, maybe you can get away with 80 cents on the dollar, but in most parts of the country,
Okay.
you need to buy it at 60, 70 cents. 70.
And you're all in, including your construction, your cost of capital, and your rehab can't exceed what? 75%?
Yeah.
78? I mean, so here's my question. And there's a lot of people chasing those deals. Would you agree?
Oh yeah.
They're chasing the distressed properties. So let me ask you a question. So what happens to the stuff that's above 75%? What about the stuff that's available at 80%? What about the stuff at 85%?
Yeah, most people don't know what to do with those.
Exactly. And those are huge, huge opportunities.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because there's little to no competition on it, and you can still do the deal structure, because when you do the seller finance, because you can take those down on terms,
yeah,
and you can do them subject to, you can let the seller stay in the deal. These are all things. I'm actually writing a book, and it's not quite out yet. Maybe it is by the time the podcast gets finished, and I may at the end of this, people that stay on, we'll give them an email address they can send to them. We can send them some of the ebook versions. But at the end of the day, you can still monetize those deals. Joe, I've done numerous deals where there's been negative equity in the deals, because you can create the deals that you want. If a seller wants, here's an example. I did a deal. This has been a few years now. The guy wanted $100,000. That was literally retail price, and it was his own house. He had owned it and lived in it for years. He had moved out, downsized, and had a renter in there for a number of years. And then basically the renter left, and he was just tired of being a landlord, which is what happens. And he wanted $100,000, and I go, that's retail. I go, why do you want $100,000? I go, it's a round number. I really don't need the money, whatever. I said, so, okay, here's what I'll do. I will give you the $100,000. I will give you $10,000 cash down, and then I will give you $800 a month until it's paid in full. And his rent was like $700 a month, plus he was paying taxes and insurance on it. I go, you'll get your $100,000, and I'll give you $800 a month, which is more than you get. And that if I go full term, 800 goes into 990, about 11 years, 88, whatever that comes out to be.
Which is
principal
only payments.
No interest. I paid 0 interest on that. Okay.
Yep.
So then what did I do? Well, then I did it. I went and I wrapped the underlying debt that I have, which was through seller financing, which is perfectly legal. You just got to disclose it. And when you're go back to supply and demand, when the demand is so high and people want to have ownership and they've been told they can't do it, there's not a lot of competition to get them excited about the deal.
So that's a great example. I love that deal. I've done those deals before. Talk about when you're selling that deal, that $100,000 property. What are the terms that you're selling that on?
Yeah, so it was probably I know exactly what it was. So what I sold it for, $105,000. I got $15,000 down,
which covered. You took the 10 grand you had to get to the seller from that 15 grand you got from your buyer.
Yep. So I made $5,000 cash on the transaction, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe a little less because there's probably some closing costs and stuff in there. But it was still. This is a negative equity deal. There is no equity in this transaction, and I ended up turning around and putting on a 30-year note for probably 9.5%, 10%. This is about 5-6 years ago. So what did I gain out of that? Well, after so now we got a cash flow coming in. My cash flow on that is probably, $975. I'm paying $800, so I'm cash flowing it there. So what I did on that, I just accelerated the payoff. I just took the extra principal and interest that I was receiving of $175, and I just paid down the underlying debt. I probably, in hindsight, should have left it because I was at 0% interest. Probably wanted to make that longer than shorter, but I just did it because if I can get to cash neutral, I like that better. I like it better because if that buyer defaults or something like that, and I don't have any debt in the deal, and I'm already paid off, then I have a lot more options on my side. And if you have this, multiple properties like this, then you don't have to necessarily, feel like you're pressured because you got an underlying payment due to a private lender or a bank. So, this got accelerated down. I think I had the whole thing paid off in like 5 or 6 years. And then at the end, I'm left with a free and clear note, the UPB, the unpaid balance. Because remember, I was zero interest, but it was like interest only at zero. I wasn't even paying them amortized. I'm still getting amortized. So let's just say it took me 10 years to get it, which it was a little less than that. The UPB on a $95,000 note in 10 years, it's still $90,000. So if that buyer that I sold that property to decides to move out and sell his house and go wherever he is, he's going to call the bank, which is me, and ask for the payoff. The payoff is whatever the payoff is on the amortization. To this day, they haven't paid it off. They're still making a payment. So I have a free and clear note of my portfolio.
So
but that's the kind of stuff that we can do.
When you sell it, what are the terms that you sell it? 9 or 10%? Is there a balloon that you do? Is it just 30 years, or how do you?
Yeah, no, this is straight. This is no different than we write our notes, and I strongly advise people to follow this protocol. You want to write paper that's consistent to what other institutions write. Okay, here are the primary difference between an institutional lender like a B of A, Chase, Fargo, whoever, and a private lender. First of all, they have compliance and they have guidelines they have to follow. As a small equity, low equity, not low equity, as a small cap lender, really the only thing per Dodd-Frank that I have to do is I have to prove that the borrower has the financial capacity to make that payment. That's it. So if the payment's going to be $1,000 a month, I have to prove through income verification, rent records, whatever it is, that they have the financial capacity to make the payment. You go to a Chase, for example, they are under a whole different set of rules and guidelines. They have a minimum credit score. Depending on if it's a conventional or a jumbo or FHA, there's a credit score tied to that. There's DTI. There's a minimum DTI. Your DTI cannot exceed 43%. Period. I don't think they've changed that. I talked about changing it. I don't lend commercially or on a traditional side. I don't really care. But we still follow 43%, and I would say 90% of the seller financing transactions we write are meet the DTI requirement. The fundamental difference between what we write and what banks don't do is that we write a lot of ITIN borrowers, which is ITIN, which is International Tax Identification Number, which is basically the equivalence of a Social Security number, and for people that are in the United States that pay taxes, that work, they have a job, but they just don't have a Social Security number. That's one. Or they're self-employed. That's two. Or they don't have the credit score. And it's not that they have a bad credit score, although we do consider that too. They just might not even have a credit score because they're underbanked or not banked or they've been cash buyers for as long as they've been around. So there again, those are all just some of the factors that are used. And but at the end of the day, like I said, the key to this model, in my opinion, is trying to keep rent value and ownership cost as close to possible. Because when you have those numbers, and if it's $1,000 to rent or $1,000 to purchase, it becomes a very objective decision for the borrower, right? So the borrower is going, oh, do I want to own for $1,000 a month or do I want to rent for $1,000? Yeah. Whereas if it's $1,200 or $1,300 to buy and $900 to rent, that's why some markets is extremely difficult to do this model in, because rent values relative to purchase price is just doesn't make sense. In Texas, it's a great place because property taxes are expensive, and that works to our favor. And the reason being is because if you have a rental house and you want a cash flow, guess who's got to pass that cost on in the form of higher rents. Otherwise, you don't cash flow the deal unless you're in a in a market or in an area that allows you to get, appreciation over time, which is not a good business model. So,
by the way, Nick, can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, my camera is frozen.
Oh, you did freeze up. Yeah. Okay.
So
good.
let's go ahead and finish this. I don't know what happened. This is
You still look good. You weren't picking your nose and your finger's still not there, so you're in good shape.
Yeah, at least I wasn't cross-eyed or something.
Yeah, exactly. It happens.
This is really cool. I want to ask you real quick. How do you find your deals? How do you find your deals?
Yeah, that's another great question. And, I've always been against the grain. Okay. Yeah. What I do, let me say, look, there's nothing wrong with being a wholesaler. There's nothing wrong with being a fix and flipper. There's nothing wrong with doing any of that. But I don't like to do what other people do because it's competitive, and I'm not afraid of competition. What I don't like is inefficiency.
Right.
Okay. I don't like wasting time. Hey, you're back.
Yeah.
I don't like inefficiency. And if I've got to go down the street and I got to go knock on, 50 doors to get one deal, that's not an efficient process. I come from an operations background. So, processes and operations and all that stuff, and analytics is a very integral part of what we do and how I evaluate stuff. So
sure.
I would say the majority. That's why I did end up going into seller financing, because I guess what I get, Joe, if you understand amortization, right? And I would strongly have people, even if they don't ever write a seller finance deal, understand what amortization is and how it works. Because when you see what that does, it's basically getting all your interest and all your money up front before a dollar of principal is really paid. On a 30-year mortgage, if the payment is $1,000 a month, okay, it takes 23 years to get the 50-50 of that payment. The payment never changes, right? What changes is what portion of that payment is principal and what portion of it's interest. So you got to get the year 23 on the 30-year note to have $500 going to principal and $500 going to interest. In year one, $990, depending on what the interest rate is, goes to interest, 10 goes to principal. That's why in 10 years from now, on a $100,000 note, the principal balance, unpaid balance, is crazy amount. And I've already got all my money back out of the deal, and my cost basis goes down year after year after year because I'm getting paid up front, but my balance doesn't change. Does that make sense? I don't know if I said that clearly enough.
Yeah. But like, how do you find the deals? Are people bringing them to you?
So my point is, the reason why I say that is because I don't go, because of amortization and because of the ability to create seller financing and create deals, is that I don't have to pay a competitive price. It gets back. I can pay more. I don't have to be in the 75%, right?
Yeah.
I can be in the 80 to 85%. I have no competition there because, Joe, if I hold the note, I create the note. Let's just use 10% on $100,000. It's easy math. 10% interest on $100,000 is how much? It's $10,000. Okay. So in 1 year, the difference just in 1 year, with everything else is fairly the same. The difference is if I'm willing to wait 1 year, I can pay $80,000 instead of $70,000. That's it. But I still got the back end of the deal. I still got 29 more years on the deal to make another $10,000, another 10,000. I'm just deferring. That's all that I'm doing, and it allows me time. And I'm not negative cash flow. I never go into negative cash flow in any deal, and I'm usually cash positive or cash neutral because I still get the transactional play, which is the down payment on the deal. So if I'm getting $10,000 cash down payment on a $100,000 property, even after I pay marketing fees and closing costs, I still got almost as much money as somebody that was going to wholesale the deal anyway. So the short answer to your question, I get stuff off MLS. I get stuff off MLS because I can, and I get a lot of stuff from wholesalers because they're going to let them negotiate at 75 cents on the dollar, and I'll pay them 80 cents on the dollar, and that's basically it.
I was just talking to somebody. Who was this? Yesterday. Oh, I've been doing so many podcasts, I forgot. What they did was, who was this? So they were saying how, I forget. Anyway, this one particular deal, the seller, oh, I wish I could remember who this was. But what happened was the wholesaler was trying to sell it for a certain price, and they were really struggling to get that price. Oh, I remember what it was. It was an interview on another podcast. Okay, this is what it was. And so the guy thought he had a good deal, and he wasn't able to sell it to his list of cash buyers. But one creative guy came to him and said, "Hey, listen, I can buy this if the seller's willing to do a subject to for a short, like 6 months, while we do the rehab, and then we'll turn around and sell it." So what they've done now is they bought it subject to, and they went ahead and rehabbed it, and now they're selling it on a land contract, owner finance.
Sure.
They created a wrap, and this wholesaler now, instead of getting the $10,000 assignment fee that they were hoping to get, they're getting a lot more than that because they were partnering with this other investor that came in and structured a creative financing deal. And now I don't know what the numbers are, but they're going to be making double that because they are able to give the seller. I remember what it was. Nobody, the other cash buyers weren't coming to buy the deal because it wasn't high, it wasn't low enough, right?
Right.
But the guy, he was going to have to cancel the contract and walk away. But then he was able to go back to the seller and save the deal by offering something creative like a subject to take over the mortgage for a short period of time, and then actually kept it longer, then did a land contract. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. And here's why that's extremely important, in my opinion. One, good deals are hard to come by. They have been for years. So, the ability to be able to get what I call, I've played in the fringe for a long time. So, and what I mean by fringe is like if you draw a box, right? You have a box, and then you draw another box around the box. The area that between the two boxes is the area we played in, and it all started back 8 years ago when hedge funds were really big into going and buying properties. Well, I can't compete against a hedge fund. They have so much patient capital and they have so much cheap capital. I can't compete. So I said, okay, well, let me go to an area where they don't want to be, right? Which is at the time was they wanted 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1985 or newer. Okay, well, then I'm not going to look at anything newer than 1985 or I'll look at stuff that's got 1 bath instead of 2, and maybe it's whatever. And that's what you have to do. So you have to take advantage of these opportunities. You make a lot of money just hitting singles. You're a big baseball fan, and I think people get too enamored by the fact that I was just reading a report. The average fix and flip yields about $60,000. I think that's roughly a number. It's down a few bucks. That's great. Okay, but if it takes you 180 days to do it, that's where you can go do something else and make 5 or 10,000 in 5 or 6 days. The velocity is just so much greater. But more importantly, you got to capitalize on deals that are what most people think are marginal, because there's profit and there's money to be made in that stuff. You got to stop trying to get the home run and looking for the $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 paydays and missing all the opportunities to do a little $2,000 or $3,000 transactions that falls right in your lap. I mean, that's the name of this game.
Let me show you something here. I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and just to give you an example of what we're talking about. So you guys can see my screen, right, Nick? You can see I have here Redfin. Yep. All right. I just did a search on Redfin in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and it's a big area, very competitive, super competitive, right?
Super
I did
competitive.
a search here for homes between $100,000 and $175,000, 3+ bedroom houses only, all right, that have been on the market over 90 days. Now, Dallas is a hot market, right? Look, there's 242 homes right now on the market that have been on the market in that price range for over 90 days. Do you think maybe you could find 1 or 2 deals here from a seller that might be getting a little motivated, that you could buy at 85 cents on the dollar with some creative financing?
Absolutely.
There's a lot.
You might even be able to pay them. You may even be able to pay them closer to their asking price if you get the right terms.
I mean, this is a nice house here, Bowie, Texas. I'm not afraid of the small towns. I love the small towns, by the way.
Sure.
And in fact, I would say that there's more opportunity in small towns because there's less competition. I mean, this is a real nice house, right? It's been on the market for 90 days. Who knows what's going on? Why hasn't it sold yet? It's probably maybe either needs a little bit too much work, or it's overpriced, or whatever, right? This type of a house that's been on the market now for 3-4 months, what you approach the realtor of this property, what do you tell them?
Well, I mean, I think you come in and and you just tell me exactly, be as transparent as you need to be to say, I can buy this. I'm willing to buy this property, but I need some terms on it. You got to remember that not all sellers need cash or want cash. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing that people have to understand. Is one of the biggest things, is that not everybody wants cash. This guy's asking 149. What's the price on this one? I'm just looking.
Oops, let me go back up here.
Just go wherever that was.
149,500.
149. So why is he asking 149? Well, is it because he owes 147 and he needs $2,000 to go move? Is it because, it was an investment property and he's trying to get cash out? I mean, all deals are different. You don't know, you need to know the motivation of it, but you can get close to full asking price. Look, if this seller would carry back terms for 1 year at, no interest or low interest, which I'm telling you right now, people will agree to it. You think not, but just go ask. I can't say it clearer than that. You just got to ask.
This is why the house hasn't sold yet. The toilet's in the tub, right?
That's multitasking, Joe.
Yeah.
Isn't that multitasking?
Take a shower while you're sitting on the toilet. I love it. Okay.
You can see now they already started doing some work there. You see a paint can. Yeah. But to your point, this is probably, I don't know if it shows a value on it, but they're probably asking fairly close to retail. So can you get retail on it?
Offered them retail, right? And you said, listen, maybe I can get you the 149.5 that you need for this house. If you'd be willing to owner finance it, right?
Absolutely.
You could offer them their price on your terms. You could say, absolutely. And this is crazy, Nick, that I've done before. It works really, really well. Is let me take my screen off here. I sent out letters in one zip code to free and clear homes. Did you know 1/3 of all homes in the United States are free and clear, did not have a mortgage?
That is correct.
I sent out a letter saying, hey, listen, this is a letter of intent. I know this is out of the blue, but I'd like to buy your property. I'm an investor. I'm buying more properties in the area. And I will make you a full priced offer if you're willing to do owner financing. And what I did is I attached a letter of intent that had the Zillow value. I said, I'll buy your house at Zillow value minus any repairs. And I'll pay you, I took the Zestimate rent and I cut that in half. So if the property, just round numbers, would rent for $1,000, Zestimate said, I told them I would pay you $500 a month until paid, principal only payments. But I'll offer you, if Zillow says it's worth $150,000, I'll give you $150,000 minus repairs. And I was shocked at how many responses I got back. I got a lot of angry responses. People really, really mad for whatever reason. But
people are just gonna be mad, Joe.
I'm giving them full price. Why would they be upset with that? I was shocked at how many people called me and said, you know what, this is really interesting. I've never thought of this. You mean like I don't have to go in and fix it up? I don't have to go and clean it and list it with a realtor? And I said, no, come on. Let's just do it.
Yeah, that's what the iBuyers are trying to do. I'm gonna quiz you here, Joe, because I should have probably said this in the first 10 minutes, but whatever. As we finish up talking about creative deal structuring and seller financing and stuff like that, I'm gonna put a steak dinner on the line here. Okay, if you're within 10% of this number, I'll give you 10%. In 2018. What's the dollar amount of seller financing that was done in the United States? Now, that's non-banked loans, seller financing. Take a swag of what the United States number is.
Seller financing for houses.
Seller financing, then that could be anything seller finance from, it could be single family, it could be land, it could be business. Okay, a lot of businesses are sold seller finances on terms too. But just take a swag at the total, because there's money in all that stuff. I mean, there's money in seller financing and land is no different than a house. The same process from buying it to selling it or flipping it or any of that stuff. A lot of guys have made a lot of money doing land. It's a lot less headache, by the way. But just take a swag on what do you think, how much was done in 2018?
I have no idea. 500 million.
500 million. Wow. Okay. You're wrong.
Okay.
I'll tell you that $26 billion. Billion with a B.
Wow.
$26 billion. You know what? I tried to put $26 billion in my calculator and I was 2 or 3 zeros short. I couldn't do it. I had to ask Siri to calculate an equation for me because there wasn't. It's a huge piece of this business that no one knows about. How many HGTV shows do you see talking about seller financing and creative deal structuring? It doesn't exist. Yeah. It's just not sexy, but there's more money to be made doing this. And that's exactly why we do it. The number's only going to go up. Here's another thing. When you write a note, even 15-year note, okay, and maybe it's 20, maybe it's 30, okay? In the last 5 years, there's been over $100 billion in seller-created paper that's out there right now. So there's a huge market, and that's why there's a play on it, and there's buyers for that paper. And I'm a buyer. That's why we teach and we do what we do, because now I can scale this, and now I can go out and buy paper anywhere in the United States. I don't have to get in, deal with it on a local level and necessarily have to go and find the property, fix the property, find a buyer, sell it, and get the same thing. I can scale this. So, but that's a huge number, and I think and for anybody that
that's huge.
It's a huge number, and that's all I got to say on that. So
cool.
The one other thing I want to bring up, I don't know if you've talked about this in the past, and this is something I don't do a lot of wholesaling, but I tell you what, there is a pause for concern in the wholesaling moving forward that I think people need to really start being prepared for and be cognizant of what's coming down the pike. The state of Illinois just recently had some new legislation passed, which basically prohibits wholesaling, period. It's really, now, look, it's Illinois. Let's be honest. I mean, Illinois is not Texas or Georgia or North Carolina or even.
Who would want to live there anyway?
The other 40. Well, no, but it's corrupt for a lot of different ways. But I'm not saying this is corrupt. But what I'm saying is.
Just kidding.
There's the reason why they're doing it is because they're trying to protect the buyer. But you know what? That's what they tried to do with Dodd-Frank also. And let's be honest with you. It didn't really do that much for the buyer, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that ended up paying for all this underwriting and all the RMLO and all the stuff that goes along with it. So, but it doesn't matter the reason why or the validity of it, but you're going to be required to become a realtor in the state of Illinois if you want to do more than one transaction a year. So will all states follow? Probably not. But where I'm going with this, I've already seen it in a number of states, and you probably as well.
Oh, yeah.
The ability to be able to wholesale and flip a contract without taking it down is becoming extremely more difficult in most states without getting caught. I mean, you can go fix and flip a house and not get a permit and get away with it, but to continue to do it over and over again, you're playing with fire. So I just think, for the buyers that are out there that are looking at stuff, that are limited on cash, I think things like private money is going to be a real integral part of being able to do deals, because I think it's going to be critical that you're able to take deals down with cash, either through a transactional funding. I know Matt Bell, and Matt Bell is a friend of mine too, and they have a big transactional funding that just went nationwide.
He just said, here it is. Look at this. What's up, dudes? Bringing the thunder today.
Bringing the thunder today. Get it done. Yeah, I know there's easy button lending. It's going to be primarily transactional funding, but some other stuff. They also do all kinds of other lending on a nationwide platform. But it doesn't. You need to look at stuff on a transactional basis, because you got to look to the future, not the past. I mean, that's how all business are evaluated. They look at what your future opportunity is, not what the past performance necessarily is. And you really got to start doing this kind of stuff, unless you're sitting on a big stack of cash and are a major wholesaler, even the major wholesalers, here's the other reason why double closing, I think, is of extreme value, because it takes the transparency out of the equation, right? It isn't really anybody's business how much you're making on a deal, right? If it works for the seller and it works for the buyer, they should give two rips of what you're making on it. I never cared, but a lot of people get sideways by that, and there's a lot of deals that are lost. And is it really worth a couple bucks, couple grand, to lose a $20,000-$30,000 deal? I don't think so. But anyway, I just was reading the article on the state of Illinois, in the state of Illinois, and I just think that, go Google it, go look it up, look at, wholesaling in Illinois, and it's like a 190-page, report, but there's only really like one page or one paragraph that really says what you can and can't do. So anyway, just FYI.
Good. All right, so listen, we got to wrap this up, Nick. How can people get a hold of you? You mentioned something about a book you have, right?
Yeah. So if for anybody, we're still finishing up the final edits. But anybody that is interested in either our passive note investing, wants to just have a little more. I think education is critical in this space. I mean, the ability to go out and learn. The beauty of what we do is there's so much information. There's guys like yourself, Joe, that provide a great service from an educational piece to your audience. I mean, there's stuff on YouTube. There's, when I started in real estate almost 20 years ago, there wasn't gurus around, man. There just wasn't, and then there surely wasn't REI clubs, and there wasn't, programs. You sort of did it by the seat of your pants and hope that you got it right. And a lot of people didn't get it right, and they lost a lot of money and time and stuff. So the best thing to do is send a email to support, which is just like it sounds, support at usanotepro.com. So support at usanotepro.com, just like it sounds.
Cool.
And just that's it. Send a request there. We can send you an ebook on the passive on our passive note investing. I think that's of value. I'll get them to you. So if you want to post them on your site, I'm not charging anything from these. I'm a firm believer of education. If I can help educate people just like yourself and help them not make the mistakes or prevent them from making mistakes that I've either made or seen other people make, it's going to come back to me in the long term anyway, because I'm going to get, people are going to bring, hey, I'm in California, but my brother's got a deal in Texas. You interested? Absolutely. So I like paying it forward. We have the passive note investing ebook. We'll have the one on seller financing, and also have the one on transactional funding that talks about some of the things we talked about. And we'll make them available on the site and send them all out.
Are you working with Matt on easybuttonlending.com?
Yeah, we are. Actually are, yes.
Look at that.
So there it is,
easybuttonlending.com. Matt, there you go. There you go. Masterminds. Really good guy.
Yeah, he's a good dude, man. So I think we'll see each other in a week, so whatever.
Yes,
when we
right.
So
I remember. Okay, Nick, thank you so much, guys. Easybuttonlending.com if you want rental financing for the BRRRR strategy. Transactional.
Yep.
Hard money. What's the new term for it now if you need it for like 3 days?
That's the transactional funding.
Just transactional funding?
Yeah.
There's another term for it. I forget. Anyway. Or send an email for this book and the materials that Nick was talking about. Support at usanotepro.com. Thanks for being on the show, Nick. Sure appreciate it. When you're here in St. Louis,
thanks for having me.
We'll go to a Cardinals game or a Blues game, depending on when you're
here. One of the two. They're both good.
And have a steak. Well, I guess I owe you a steak because I was so far.
Well, you didn't theoretically or technically take the bet. I sort of suckered you into it. Maybe we'll just do a cheeseburger or something.
I'll eat anything on the hill. Let's go have dinner on the hill.
That's exactly where we're going to go.
All right.
Thank you, Nick. Go to Jerry's or something. Peace out. Thanks, guys.
Everybody, thanks a lot. If you want the show notes and the links and everything that we talked about, go to realestateinvestingmastery.com. realestateinvestingmastery.com to get the show notes and the links and everything we talked about, even the transcription of this podcast. All right. We'll see you guys later. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.